Good morning, everybody. It's 10 a.m., so I'm going to get us started here. I want to acknowledge that with us calling this special session, there's been some confusion around our agenda, so I just want to kind of table set as we launch this morning. We're going to go to closed session right away here at 10 for 10 to 15 minutes. We will be right back. And after that, we will come back and receive the briefing, adopt the resolution with agreement from this board, and then go back to closed session after that. So I just want to be clear about what's going to happen in terms of order this morning. Closed session, quickly, coming back for the two presentations, and then going back to closed session after. Okay, so at this time, let the record reflect that all members of the board are present except for Supervisor Luis Alejo, who will join us shortly. I'll turn to the clerk to see if we have any additions or corrections to our agenda this morning.
There are none.
Okay, seeing that, we're going to start by going to closed session. I'm going to open this up, see if there's any public on the first closed session. I know it's kind of weird. Legally, I have to open that up. So I want to give the public an opportunity if anybody has comments on that closed session, not general public comment at this point on the issue. Okay, seeing none in room, no hands via Zoom. We'll close that public comment, bring it back, and we're going to recess to closed session. We'll be back in 10 to 15 minutes in this room. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. Best intentions, but we ran a little over. Thank you for your patience. At this point, I'm going to reconvene the Board of Supervisors. Let the record reflect that all members of the board are present. And we're going to begin with item 1 this morning, which is briefing on the Vistra Energy fire at the Moss Landing Power Plant. For the public's sake, I want to just lay out the order of speakers here. We're going to have DEM present first, followed by the Sheriff and Fire Chief. After the Sheriff and Fire Chief, we're going to go to Rich Stedman from the Air Board. Elsa Jimenez from the Health Department will follow that, along with Rick Encarnacion and Dr. Moreno from her team. And so with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Kelsey. After they have their opportunities to brief, then we'll go to public comment. So Kelsey, the floor is yours.
Good morning, members of the board, County Administrative Officer De La Rosa, and members of the public. Thank you for having me today. My name is Kelsey Scanlon. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for the County of Monterey. Today we're here to deliver a high-level overview of our response to the Moss Landing Vistra battery facility fire and discuss our focus for transitioning into recovery.
Thank you, Kelsey. So before we proceed, I'm going to ask Diego Celis to give us the interpreter's introduction, just in case there's anybody online or in room that needs interpretation.
Muy buenos días, mi nombre es Diego Celis, seré su intérprete español para la reunión de hoy. Si usted está planeando hacer un comentario público y necesita servicio de intérprete, por favor, hablar lenta y suficientemente fuerte para que yo lo escuche. Favor hacer una pausa al final de sus oraciones para asegurarse de que tengo la oportunidad de interpretarle. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Diego. Sorry, Kelsey, back to you.
It's okay. Where was I? Our priority continues to be the health and safety of the community, the responders who have served throughout the duration of this event, and the environment. We remain compassionate and responsive to the concern for all of those who have been impacted. And we would like to take a moment to thank our on-scene responders who have been out in the community tirelessly since Thursday. But I also want to take a moment to draw our attention to the disaster service workers within the County of Monterey who have been serving. They are ultimately the hidden responders, and without them, we really have no logistics, we have no public information, we have no additional support other than that immediate life safety. So I do want to thank them, especially their service over the weekend and on the MLK holiday. Their worth is truly incalculable. So in getting into my presentation, I did want to acknowledge that this event is still ongoing. It began Thursday, January 16th. Essentially, the high-level overview is a battery fire at the 300-megawatt Phase 1 energy storage facility at Moss Landing Power Plant began on Thursday. This site is an alternative energy storage facility operated by Vistra Energy Corporation. It should be noted that PG&E also has a battery facility site on premise, but was not a part of this incident. The facility contains lithium-ion batteries and is one of the world's largest battery energy storage system sites here in Monterey County. So in a board report that I provided in I believe February 2022, we provided a high-level overview of some of the threats and hazards generally presented by lithium-ion batteries. This technology is really exciting for the state. It provides a lot of added value for sustainable and renewable energy. But with any new technology, there is new and emerging threats that we learn about and work with our partners to assess and strategize on our response and training capabilities. Generally, lithium-ion batteries can overheat, creating thermal runaway, which can result in either cell ignition or cell breach. Typically, the layman's terms are, battery fires or explosions. Additionally, as a result, a secondary or tertiary hazard could be toxic gas, smoke, or plumes, and as a result of fire suppression efforts, toxic runoff. The presentation, or this slide really goes into the depths about the science behind it, but I won't delve into it too much. What I wanted to present with this slide is going into this incident, it was very apparent to the first responders as well as to our office, as well as environmental health, what the potential threats could be. And as such, all of the protective actions that were taken over the last 6 days were a direct attempt to reduce the public health or the threats to public health and safety that these could possibly pose. And the efforts that we put into place were to confirm that they were not actually a threat and that the community could remain safe at their homes. And so I did want to highlight, I think there's been a lot of confusion about what the actual threat or hazard is to public health and safety and why we made some decisions that we did. And so I think there's a fundamental need to explain what was threatening and how we mitigated that impact. So the incident was first reported at approximately 3 p.m. North County Fire was first on scene at 3:06 p.m. And in between that time, multiple agencies began responding at the request of North County Fire Protection District, and I'll allow them the opportunity to explain their response. At approximately 3:29, the Department of Emergency Management was notified of a potential fire at the facility. By 4:59 p.m., a hazard advisory alert was issued to the public, and initial air monitoring was conducted at approximately 4 p.m. At approximately 5:35 p.m., flames were reported on the roof, at which point the fire conditions resulted in the deterioration of the building. At approximately 6 p.m., road closures were requested. At 6:10 p.m., the county had our first media interview. And at 6:15 p.m., the Emergency Operations Center was activated to a level 2. About almost 10 minutes later, the Emergency Operations Center submitted a state mission task for the U.S. EPA to provide air monitoring support on scene. At 6:32 p.m., evacuation orders were issued by the sheriff. At 7:10 p.m., a temporary evacuation point was established. And at 8:15, a shelter was opened. Notice of school closures were issued at 8:30 p.m. and approximately 11 p.m., a health advisory was issued. It is extremely important to highlight how efficient and effective the response was from start to finish. This timeline demonstrates a very aggressive and conservative approach to protecting health and safety. Our number one priority from the start of the incident and ongoing through the recovery efforts has and always will be public health and safety. And so I have to commend North County Fire Protection District, the Monterey County Sheriff's Office, and all of the first responder agencies that supported for their extremely timely response and extremely proactive communication up and down the chain of command and with the public. On day 2, the U.S. EPA arrived at approximately 2 a.m. to assist in the monitoring of the air on the facility and around the facility. By 8:30 a.m., this body had convened an emergency meeting and throughout the day had been actively communicating with the community as well as the media through various channels. Around 12 p.m. that day, I believe the remaining batteries within the facility began combusting, which is where we saw that flare up again on day 2 and additional smoke and plume columns. The Department of Emergency Management and the Emergency Operations Center through Environmental Health and the North County Fire Protection District received initial hydrogen fluoride gas monitoring readings from the U.S. EPA as well as the independent contractor that Vistra had hired, confirming that the hydrogen fluoride levels were below the threshold that is considered potentially harmful. Later on today, you'll hear from Environmental Health regarding those readings. This was extremely helpful in providing us the opportunity to reevaluate the evacuation orders. And at that juncture, I believe the sheriff lifted the evacuation orders, and I'll let her explain a little bit about the decision-making process. At that juncture, the shelter closed at 10 p.m. Throughout day 1 and day 2 and ongoing after that, there were approximately 100 mobile air monitoring locations provided by CTEH, the independent contractor hired by Vistra, throughout the community to detect 7 different air constituents. Those results were confirmed by the U.S. EPA utilizing 9 stationary monitoring units. On day 3, the CTEH initial air monitoring report was released to the county at 3:37 p.m. and approximately 4 p.m. Those same results were released to the public. On day 4, the EOC downgraded to a level 3 as the incident began de-escalating. The county did request a state mission task for a health assessment team to help us interpret the mass quantity of data provided by the air monitoring reports. At that juncture, the road closures were open, the evacuation orders had already been lifted, and the incident command post moved on premise to the Moss Landing facility. On day 5, just yesterday, we established a joint information center with a various number of agencies from across the county and our partners in Santa Cruz County. The schools were notified of return to classes. A structural engineer arrived on site to conduct an assessment of the stability of Moss 300 so that remediation planning could begin. The U.S. EPA demobilized and the state health assessment team mobilized. As of today, approximately 7 emergency alerts were disseminated in total to the community. 1 temporary evacuation point was established and transitioned to a shelter. 4 road closures were held for approximately 24 to 48 hours. 1,200 people were evacuated, 37 of which sought shelter at the Castroville Rec Center, operated by American Red Cross and the Department of Social Services, and the evacuation was in place for approximately 24 hours. The Public Information Officer conducted 3 press conferences, 7 media advisories, 200 media contacts, 5 public information officers working to support 31 interviews and 57 social media posts. This is a quick slide for additional resources. The county established an incident webpage to connect people with reports and up-to-date information, including evacuation orders, road closures, etc. There is also a response page on the Vistra website that has some very useful information. You can also evaluate the Monterey Bay Air Resources District current air quality and forecast resources online. Air quality FAQs can be found at the on the Monterey County website under News and Information. And of course, you can always review the press conferences on the Monterey County YouTube channel. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the significant number of partners that were extremely cooperative and collaborative. This was a new and novel event in terms of this scale. And whenever you tackle new challenges, it's best to have a lot of yes people in the room. And that's what this list represents. And so it takes a village, and this is our village. And they did a tremendous job mobilizing resources, evaluating challenges, creating unique solutions for unique challenges and problems. And I really want to acknowledge there are nonprofits on here, there are independent agencies on here, there are small businesses on here who truly, without them, we could not have responded so effectively. And so thank you to all of our partners. And with that, I will hand it back to you, Chair.
Supervisor Church.
Kelsey, I just have one question. Could you show the picture with the CTH where they monitored, please? Is there any, my understanding is when the, and I could see visually when the flame started, it was blowing directly east, and then there was discussion that night of going north towards Watsonville. Any reason that we know why CTEH did not immediately put out these monitors out more into the Perrindale area, to the east?
I do not know that answer and will defer to Vistra.
Okay, thank you.
All right, at this point, we're going to go to Sheriff Nieto as well as Chief Mendoza. I'm going to invite them forward.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the board. I want to express my sincere gratitude to the incredible network of partners who are supporting Law and Fire through this incident. From our dedicated volunteers to local, state, and federal agencies, including Monterey County, your unwavering support has been instrumental in mitigating this challenging event. We are deeply grateful to your professionalism, dedication, and commitment to protecting our community. I have a list that I was thinking about going over. However, since we do have a printout of that, and it's probably a better list, I'm going to hold off on mine, but I would like to just say that, we can't do it alone, and the effort that has been put forth by everyone is just immeasurable. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I'd like to go over a quick summary. I know Kelsey just went over one, but I'd like to give you a quick summary from my perspective, and it'll shed a little more light on the actions that went on that night. So on Thursday, January 16th, North County Fire was dispatched to a fire at the Moss Landing Power Plant. The first engine arrived on scene in about 5 to 6 minutes and found there was smoke coming from the roof of the 800-foot-long, 75-foot-tall building housing lithium-ion battery energy storage system. This building is known as Moss 300. By the time the first engine arrived, multiple batteries had burned and fire was actively propagating from battery rack to battery rack. So we could observe through closed circuit television that batteries were on fire, and it was a number of different batteries, but they would catch the adjoining batteries on fire as time progressed. So this process resulted in a large-scale commercial fire that destroyed the majority of the building and its contents. The incident prompted responders to order evacuations and close local and state roadways in order to protect lives. So current conditions. A small fire was observed on Saturday, and we have not seen any fires since. Only small pockets of heat are observed, and we observe those using drones and infrared thermal imaging. The unburned portion of the building appears to be stable as of this morning, and we will continue to monitor it. So future actions for the fire department, we will continue to work with our county, state, and federal cooperators to fully stabilize the incident and provide technical expertise and preparation for mitigation by the plant operator.
Good morning, Supervisors. The recent fires at the Moss Landing battery storage facility are of concern to both public safety and the community. And we are continuing to seek answers almost a week later, and that's why we're all here. As a member of the Unified Command, I've obviously spent the last 6 days working with my public safety partners, to include Chief Mendoza to my right, your left, as a team to render the Vista plant safe for both the community, public safety, and Vista employees in order to begin the recovery phase of this incident. The day after the fire began, many of our elected community leaders came out to the incident command with many questions. The elected officials that came out included Representatives Jimmy Panetta, Zoe Lofgren, Senator John Laird, Speaker Robert Rivas, Assemblywoman Dawn Addis, and all of the Board of Supervisors sitting in front of me. In addition, Energy Commission Chair David Hochschild and many other government officials responded to receive briefings on the fire timeline, air quality, and environmental concerns and potential impacts on local residents. All of the officials and electeds that I met with, I had the same request. If you build a facility, you need to equip that facility and the first responders with the ability to detect any toxins that a disaster may cause to be released during the incident that can cause harm to our communities. We've identified that this is one of the reasons we had to put out an evacuation, because we weren't sure what the levels were in the air. We weren't sure we knew what was being released because it was a lithium battery fire. We knew what kind of batteries it were. We were working with our cooperators and with Vista throughout the event, but we couldn't make decisions based on maybes. Equipping these type of facilities with this kind of equipment for either our first responders or so our first responders can get access to this type of equipment would help those in charge make better decisions. Obviously, the hydrofluoride was a concern to both myself and Chief Mendoza. And our evacuation decisions were based on the possibility that these could be released to our public. Our road closure decisions were based on both bringing in first responders and the safety of our community. All these type of decisions during these type of incidents have impact on both our residents and our businesses. And as first responders, we understand that. But equipping our first responders with stuff like this helps us make quicker decisions in order to lift evacuation orders, to open roads, to stop the disruption that we cause to our communities in disasters like this. I personally want to thank Chief Mendoza because I know how tirelessly he worked during this whole incident. In fact, as I was sitting in the audience, I asked him, "Did you finally get some sleep?" He said yes, he got a few hours. For Chief Mendoza and for firemen, that's probably a half hour, but thank you, Chief Mendoza. I also want to thank all the first responder teams, the cooperators that worked around the clock to protect and inform our community as best we could. I look forward to working with the Board of Supervisors and addressing the challenges, improving our systems that our public has found inadequate and demand answers for. I want to thank the public behind me for being here today to voice their concerns so we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff and Chief. With that, we're going to proceed. Next up, we have Rich Stedman from MVARD, which is the Monterey Bay Air Resources District.
Good morning, Board of Directors. First of all, I'd like to start with thanking both Supervisors Root Askew and Lopez for getting MVARD plugged into this response when you did. Our district has a lot of capabilities that can be used to help in these types of situations, and the public expects that we're monitoring the air and that we can talk with good authority about what the air quality is. To that end, MVARD received hundreds of phone calls from concerned citizens about the air quality in the region. And we've been answering and addressing those as we come. We are not a first responding agency. And to that end, too, I'd like to thank all of the first responders. Being involved with that group was very uplifting, and there was a lot of amazing work done. So to that end, we did have some setbacks, however, particularly with the news media, who were using some of our data and some of EPA's regular smoke data and improperly and erroneously reporting that air quality throughout the Monterey Bay region was hazardous or unhealthful. We did talk to the news media about this, and they said they would retract, but they continued attributing moderate air quality conditions around the Monterey Bay to the Vistra fire, which was not appropriate. We feel fairly confident based on the plume characteristics of the fire, along with our monitoring data, and we have sensors, over 30 monitors, sensor data throughout our 3-county jurisdiction, in addition to 8 regulatory monitors, which are very expensive and sophisticated pieces of equipment, that the air quality, while it did go into moderate, was not associated with the fire. It was more associated with wood smoke throughout our region. And if you go on to our, now with the fire plume down and almost completely out, you can also look on our website and see that air quality has dipped into moderate with the cold temperatures and stable air conditions throughout the region, indeed throughout the state. We've been seeing moderate air quality from Sacramento down to Santa Barbara, especially in the San Joaquin Valley. So we feel fairly confident that at least where our monitors are situated and our sensors are situated, that there was no adverse impact associated with emissions from the plant fire. We did not do speciation of chemicals found because that would be a pretty exhaustive and expensive process to do. We did not test for hydrofluoric acid. That also is very expensive, and EPA seemed to have a handle on that with their monitors or sensors surrounding the fire. I should also add that hydrofluoric acid is a gas. It's lighter than air. It would not typically follow plume characteristics associated with particulate matter, so we would not expect to find HF gas. It's also very reactive. We wouldn't expect to find that in any of the plumes if we had tested at our monitoring locations. So along those lines, I should also say that we're willing to work with Vistra on perhaps establishing a more secure or better, tighter net monitoring system around the facility for particulate matter, and we could look into HF sensors as well. So that's a possibility going forward, but it's important also to recognize that we don't directly regulate Vistra, and that's because they have no emissions. This plant does not emit on a routine basis emissions to the environment. Of course, during an emergency episode such as this, a battery plant or any other facility will have emissions associated with their fire. And our monitors are pretty good at picking up emissions. I can tell you that we've been seeing pretty amazing connectivity among our monitors with respect to wood smoke and drainage throughout our region. And so we feel very confident that there have not been any adverse impacts associated with exposure to PM 2.5 is what we're measuring at our monitors and sensors. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and we will continue to monitor the air as we do 24/7, 365 days a year, and that data is available near real time on our website at mbard.org.
Thank you, Mr. Stedman. We're going to keep going. Elsa Jimenez, the director of our health department, is next, along with her team, including Rick Encarnacion, lead on environmental health, as Dr. Moreno, our public health officer.
Good morning, members of the board, members of the public. I am Elsa Jimenez and currently serve as the county's Director of Health Services. As a North County resident, I empathize with the concerns my fellow North County neighbors and residents of surrounding areas had with respect to the Vistra power plant fire. Thank you for prioritizing your health and safety by heeding to road closures, the evacuation order, and health advisories issued by our public health officials. During an activation of the Emergency Operations Center, the Health Department staffs the Medical and Health Branch under the Operations section and supports the Joint Information Center unit. Today, you will hear from Rick Encarnacion, the county's Environmental Health Director, who will speak to actions taken to monitoring and reporting air quality results and next steps in the process. You will also hear from Dr. Edward Moreno, our County Public Health Director and Health Officer, who will speak to public health recommendations made in response to the event. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Rick Encarnacion, Director of Environmental Health. I too would like to thank our partners, especially the first responders who responded to this incident. I'd also like to give a special thank you to the US EPA, who with a phone call was able to come to our incident and provide the services that we needed. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, and the Monterey Bay Air Resources District, MBARD, and VISTRA monitored air quality, and VISTRA continues to monitor air quality in and around the fire perimeter and across Monterey County. The County of Monterey has received raw air quality data from the U.S. EPA, which is being analyzed with the assistance from the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, also known as OEHA. Air monitoring results indicate that no levels of hydrogen fluoride exceeded OEHA's acute reference exposure level, also known as the REL, of 300 parts per billion in the community at VISTRA's fence line or at the site of the fire. The acute REL is the highest concentration of a chemical that a person can safely be exposed to for 1 hour without an increased risk of serious non-cancer health impacts, including for children and sensitive individuals. No PM 2.5 levels exceeded the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or the NAAQS, of 35 micrograms per cubic meter. PM is particulate matter. The county is committed to transparency and will continue to post raw data and additional information as it becomes available. The raw data collected by US EPA will be made available and is accessible through our webpage and in a downloadable spreadsheet format for public review. I'd also like to say that the Environmental Health Bureau, we're the health inspectors for the county. We're the same people that do your restaurant inspections, pool inspections, gas station inspections. And for this case, we're the ones who also have oversight over hazardous materials. Next steps moving forward, we're involved, just like in every disaster, we're involved with the cleanup efforts. We already are in contact with our state partners, have been in contact with our state partners, Cal EPA, DTSC, the California Department of Public Health, for assistance. But overall, it'll be our bureau that will be overseeing the cleanup process. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moreno.
Thank you, Rick. Good morning, board members. My name is Ed Moreno. I'm the Director of Public Health and the Monterey County Health Officer. So I would first like to acknowledge that county residents are concerned about the smoke that was created by the fire at the VISTRA facility. And in particular, there's been concern about the potential health impacts from the particulate matter and chemicals that released in the smoke and the potential health impacts. As part of the medical health branch in the Emergency Operations Center, Public Health was asked by the Joint Information Center to provide public health recommendations that the JIC, or Joint Information Center, could share with the general public. Information provided to public health early in the response included potential chemicals in the smoke, such as particulate matter and hydrogen fluoride gas. At that time, public health recommended that the JIC release guidance to the Monterey County community, which included urging residents in areas affected by smoke to take steps to protect their health, and that residents who live closest to the fire or smell smoke should limit outdoor activities, remain indoors, keep windows and doors closed, and adjust central air systems to recirculate indoor air or close outdoor air intakes to avoid drawing in smoky outdoor air. We also advise that the EOC remind county residents that smoke can cause eye and throat irritation, coughing, and difficulty breathing. That people who may be the most sensitive to smoke from fire include young children, older adults, pregnant people, people with respiratory conditions such as asthma or heart conditions, and that sensitive populations and people who live in areas affected by smoke should avoid outdoor activities and seek medical guidance if respiratory symptoms develop or worsen. Finally, we recommend that people who are outdoors where smoke is present consider wearing a well-fitting N95 mask. Since then, Public Health has reviewed data, which the previous speakers have just shared with you, including situational briefings by the EOC and air monitoring data by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Monterey Bay Area Resources District, VISTA, and the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. And Public Health has updated the public health guidance as needed. Finally, County Public Health, Environmental Health, and representatives from the County EOC Joint Information Center have met daily with our colleagues from the counties of San Benito and Santa Cruz counties to coordinate public health guidance across the region. Moving forward, Public Health will continue to support the County Joint Information Center and will once again work with Environmental Health as this disaster response effort transitions to assessment and cleanup. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, as promised, I know we have a lot of folks from the public who want to share their thoughts and comments with us. This is your opportunity. We're going to allow 2 minutes per speaker. I do want to quickly turn before we have folks come up and see if we have any. I know I had a few elected folks who had mentioned they wanted to speak. Do we have any on Zoom at this point? If they would do me the favor to raise their hand. Okay. Not seeing anybody raising their hand, we'll go ahead and start. Please form a queue. I see folks doing so on the left side of the room. We'll start here with Mr. Mitchell.
Good morning. I'd like to cede my time to Mr. Mitchell.
You only use 2 minutes per person.
I only do that ahead of time. We're not going to do that at the lectern today, so we're going to allow 2 minutes per speaker today.
Speaker, this is a unique event. We'd like to have your flexibility. We have a number of people who've never done this. I'm going to speak for them, and so we're going to put it together, and we'd like you to approve that.
So it should have been brought to my attention ahead of time. I mean, that's the way we do that here at the board. How many folks are you trying to put together, Mr. Mitchell?
Just 4.
For a total of 8 minutes?
Yes, sir. I'll take 4 minutes.
I'll give you 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. At the Grange I'm Ed Mitchell, North County, overseer of the Grange and a supporter of the Moss Landing Fire Community Recovery Group. A standing room only body of over 160 people met yesterday. And what the community group was trying to do is elicit from there what their needs were, information needs, concerns, and recommendations they can bring to the board. We want to work with you, thank you, in a cooperative manner to go forward. There are some things that the community may be slow to pick up on or things that they are concerned that they wanted to share with you. So what came up last night was, one, there was a feeling of a lack of information. Thank you for this meeting. Thank you for this handout. But we believe that you as supervisors are also lacking some information. The concerns are that a number of situations, what we did, we looked at 9 areas like cleanup, air impacts, etc. They're concerned that the analysis of the air was inadequate. We don't know the specifications in there. There was lithium in the air. There was particulates from other things that were burnt. And telling us that wood smoke is what was monitored doesn't truly make us confident. We're skeptical of that. We just need more information. There are people that don't have, they have concerns that they didn't know where to get an answer because they have breathing problems and this might affect them. They wanted a place to call. We recommend to you that you establish a website that lists the information you have that we can go and look at. Plus, we can sign up for you to push us information to us. For example, if an updated report comes out on air quality, please send it to it, or send it to us, and then we can read it. Additionally, we're concerned about the cleanup. We believe there should be an assessment of the quantity and size and the tonnage of what is going to be handled and where it is going. Personally, I am very skeptical that there's zero contaminants in the material in the building or what may have settled on the ground and on the crops. We have people that are organic farmers that are concerned, can I sell this leafy plant now? What do I have to do? We have people that are concerned about their water wells. I didn't hear anything about, I missed the amount of water well monitoring that may be done. We don't know what falls on the ground. Will it be a threat to me or not? Do you know? So those are some of the things we're concerned about. So the cleanup, is it going to be hauled away? Do they think they're going to park it in Marina or the Crazy Horse landfill? No way. Do they have the people and capability to haul it away? Where would it go? Or is it going to be stored on property? Is it going to be taken out back and parked on a cement place where it might soak into the ground. We've seen places that this has happened to us before. So those are the types of major things that we're concerned about. Thrilling technology. We appreciate, many of the responders know that North County and the Grange really appreciate what they do. And we appreciate hearing how people work to try to handle a technology. But it's a technology that when it goes wrong, it's not thrilling. It's terrifying.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Board of Supervisors, Joe Cubbage, Big View AI. I was contacted last night by a member of the press, a gentleman that I respect and who often speaks about principles. And he reminded me that I had made a comment on Supervisor Alejo's Facebook page some years back about my concerns with implementing this battery facility. I talked about the thermal runways, the threat that this technology posed, that it was early on, and that we're on a national marine sanctuary. We got Elkhorn Slough. I'm concerned about the health, welfare, and long-term stability of this community. And so I really, I didn't come here with a speech, but I want to highlight some notes that I took in just listening to the people before me speaking. The gentleman spoke before me. Thank you very much. Very well said, everything that you did say. Glenn Church, I always say great men speak of principles, and I really appreciate you standing up during this very delicate time in our community. I heard one of the young ladies say that, quote unquote, we have a lot of yes people in the room. So I want you to think about that. When I look at the photos that are there of the concrete, okay, I remember years back talking about the threat, the temperature burn, the burn rate. It's very similar, as a defense contractor working in war zones. I was at the battle for Kyiv. I'm still dealing with the side effects of chemical exposure. So I'm asking all those that were on scene to continue to monitor your health. There was a lag time of hours prior to adequate monitoring systems being put in place. Vestra batteries, those who did the early monitoring were contracted by them. There's a special interest. Did any of you guys take any money from this company? Any of you? Did any of you take money from this company? I want to know.
Thank you, Joe. Bill?
Bill Lipe, resident of Monterey County. I'd like to begin by offering a prayer. Lord, we ask for your protection and strength for the brave first responders who have faced this fire and for our neighbors impacted by the disaster. Through Jesus Christ, we pray for wisdom and safety for all. Amen. I now ask a question that demands an answer. Who are the powerful people in our state and country that allowed this toxic brew to be built next to our neighbors and our beloved Elkhorn Slough? This fire at the Moss Landing Energy Storage Facility is not just an accident. It is a result of short-sighted decisions that prioritize profits over public safety. What kind of common sense allowed the construction of a facility where water, our most basic firefighting tool, is useless against a blaze? This disaster has exposed glaring gaps in safety protocols and emergency preparedness. Our community has endured evacuations, hazardous air, and significant disruptions, yet we still lack clear answers about the chemicals released and their long-term health impact. Was air monitoring sufficient? Were residents adequately warned? While renewable energy is vital, it must not come at the expense of human safety or the protection of our treasured Elkhorn Slough. I urge this board to demand accountability, require an independent investigation, and establish stricter safety standards moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Light. Next.
Good morning. My name is Freya Reed. I'm a member of the Elkhorn Slough Foundation and an artist who paints at Elkhorn Slough. I am also the manager of Last Chance Mercantile, and I've dedicated my life to making the planet a better place for all of us. I attended the first meeting of the Moss Landing Community Response Group last night, and A common theme across all groups was data collection. Everyone's collecting their own data. People are scraping samples together to try to get data because no one trusts the data that's out there right now. The most compelling story I heard last night was a pregnant woman who lives on her boat in Moss Landing. She's a fisherman, and with her partner, they had to evacuate. When they came back, their boat was covered with debris. Her partner, they went down below, and her partner cleaned off that debris into the Elkhorn Slough and said that he would lose his fishing license in a normal scenario. That toxic brew that he just threw into the bay would cause him to lose his fishing license by other regulatory agencies. This technology is clearly not ready for prime time. A lot of us do not want to be guinea pigs for Vistra or Tesla or PG&E. We want to work with you, and I'd like these facilities all to be taken offline, all of them to be taken offline until the risks of technology can align with the communities and the environment's needs for safety. Our children and our sea otters deserve that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Omar Dieguez. I live in Las Lomas at the end of Elkhorn Slough. I want to know why are we seeking answers now? Why are we just getting to the point where we're trying to seek data right now? We should have seeked all this stuff before we allowed these companies into this area. I never got an evacuation notice. I didn't know that there was an evacuation notice. I suffer from asthma. I had asthma. I had chemical taste in my mouth for 2 days. I ended up in the hospital, got treated for asthma. Every time I get treated for asthma, for me, any contact with any kind of chemicals could be deadly. Every single time I'm exposed to them. So I got treated, ended up going back to the hospital because it wasn't enough. And I want answers. I also want to know, how safe is it? We don't even know how safe it is to be out there right now. We need answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Peter Ziegler. I am the Vice President of Operations for Vistra Corporation, and under my purview is the Moss Landing Power Plant. Firstly, we'd like to sincerely thank our first responders, specifically Chief Mendoza, Battalion Chief Sudama, Sheriff Nieto, and their teams, along with the state, county, and federal agencies that supported the efforts at Moss Landing. We're grateful for the many years of planning and training in unison with the fire department and other county officials, which supported an outcome where we had no reported injuries from either the incident or ongoing. As Chief Mendoza said, we are continuing to monitor the site and can confirm that there is no active flame and a limited amount of smoldering is continuing. Air monitoring conducted by the Environmental Protection Agency and independent third-party quality experts continues to demonstrate that the site and surrounding area is safe and does not pose a risk to the public. Air quality monitoring is ongoing and will continue throughout this response. Now, the decisions for the locations of the monitoring equipment was made in concert with the EPA and county based on wind direction. We amended sampling locations each day based on wind direction. Additionally, the Marina Coast Water District did communicate with residents that the water supply remains safe. While much progress has been made in the last 5 days, there is more work that remains to be done. Our top priority remains ensuring the safety of the community, the first responders, and our employees. Our crews continue to monitor the site in coordination with Chief Mendoza and his team, and investigatory work will begin as soon as possible. The other 3 plants on the site, 1 gas plant and 2 other battery facilities, were taken offline in response to evacuation order and remain offline. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Ana Luz Acevedo Cabrera. I am a resident of Royal Oaks, also grew up in the area. And I spent many years, actually my entire career was in Silicon Valley. So I want to offer the tech perspective on this, also having been exposed to what happened. This is what I wrote last night, and I share this in LinkedIn. Having experienced firsthand the Moss Landing fire in my very own backyard, along with some of the side effects of breathing in that toxic smoke, despite the sheltering in place, because we were just outside the evacuation line, I can tell you that my outlook on lithium batteries has certainly changed. Don't get me wrong, I am all for renewable energy, and we do need batteries for storage, but lithium batteries were just supposed to be part of the transition phase, while more stable and energy-efficient batteries came along. Well, guess what? That transition time is over. And what happened in Moss Landing is certainly a testament to that. Now, I understand that pulling the plug at once is extremely difficult because a lot of infrastructure is already in place, and there's a significant dependency on it to run our electric grid. But you can certainly scale down that dependency and eventually replace all of it with better tech. Which brings me to my last point, AI and its energy consumption. I've said this before. I'm very skeptical of how much we truly need it in our everyday lives. Like seriously, those Google searches were working just fine before AI came along and made us products just as well. I can give you a whole list. And I don't mean to disrespect any of the talented people that have worked on this. It's just you have to understand that behind every one of those unnecessary queries is a lithium battery getting built somewhere and stored in my own backyard to meet that extra demand on our energy grid. And you have to ask yourself, is it worth putting more people's health at risk in another one of these frequent meltdowns?
Thank you. We're at time.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, Administrator De La Rosa. Is that better? My name is Brad Watson. I'm the Senior Director of Community Affairs at Vistra. Like many of our neighbors and friends, Moss Landing is our home. We have employees who live in the area who are involved in their communities and have been for many, many years. We're deeply sorry to our fellow local residents and businesses that have been disrupted by this event. We've committed to work closely with our community partners and local officials to determine how best we can help, and we'll have more information to share on this in the coming days. Obviously, we know there is a lot of public concern about this event, and I want you to know that we as a company are truly committed to addressing these concerns in an open and transparent way. As Pete just outlined, there is a lot of work ahead. We know that. And we will do that in close coordination with local, state, county, and federal agencies. To help improve communication and better inform all stakeholders, we have established a new website to share operational updates and to make additional information available. The address is mosslandingresponse.com. That's www.mosslandingresponse.com. We encourage people to visit the site regularly. It just went live on Sunday. We'll continue to update it with new information as it becomes available. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Board and Board Chair. My name is Mauricio. I'm here on behalf of State Assembly Member Dawn Addis, who unfortunately couldn't make it here today as she's on her way to Sacramento. I just wanted to take a few moments to share a message on her behalf. It reads, while we urgently need climate solutions, they must be safe for our communities and environment. For the past 4 days, my full attention has been on the battery energy storage system fire at the Moss Landing power plant. I'm calling for an independent investigation, asking Vistra and its vendors to share critical data and information with our community, and for the facility to remain closed until they can guarantee this will never happen again. We all deserve solutions that prioritize safety and sustainability. Thank you again, Board Chair, and for calling this special session to our first responders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arias. Next, please.
My name is Nina Beatty. This is a political project pushed through without an environmental impact report. The The county wrote mitigated negative declarations with false statements, ignoring known hazards, saying no significant environmental impacts. Supervisor Daniels and county planning commissioners voted for PG&E, Tesla, and Vistra projects and didn't raise known health environmental problems. Lithium-ion batteries are explosively flammable to water, heat, and air and vulnerable to thermal runaway. Manufacturing defects in the batteries cannot be detected, say industry experts. Hydrogen fluoride gas is a product. It's highly toxic, it can kill, and it travels very fast. By inhalation, lowest lethal concentrations are about 50 to 250 parts per million for a 5-minute exposure. But neither the county nor MBARD have hydrogen fluoride monitors. That costs less than $600. Despite this is the largest, best in the world, and 4 incidents, and first responders risk. The wrong plume dispersion modeling was used for project approval based on Monterey Airport data, not Moss Landing. They didn't have weather station equipment at Moss Landing until after the 3rd incident. EPA claims they couldn't detect hydrogen fluoride outside and that HF was burned up in the fire, despite that HF is produced by fires and it's non-combustible. Officials also said it went up, and then they said it went down. It's confusing. EPA has said no reason to test the water, but we know the substance is the result from these fires. They have a long history of fraud, revolving door with industries, persecution of scientists, and failure to protect the public. And we're involved in the East Palestine monitoring in Pennsylvania. This is a California issue. Where's Cal EPA? Where is the health department in their active work? And Vistra hired CTA, a very controversial company, not independent, with a long history of giving all clear in highly contaminated situations like East Palestine. The wind has blown the toxic smoke to San Benito County, Santa Cruz County, and Monterey Peninsula. And Don Addis and John Laird are best proponents.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty.
The toxicity as from this fire, we don't know when the next one will happen. It's affecting our agriculture, our tourism.
Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please.
My name is Mary Larkin. I'm a resident of Moss Landing, Peary Court. I am part of the Monterey or Moss Landing Community Response Group. We met last night at the Prunedale Grange. I am on the water group, and so there are several questions. Who will be paying for the testing of our water? We need answers on that immediately. I don't think it should be the burden of the private residents to have to get this testing paid for. As far as the review of the testing, will the Public Utilities Commission be reviewing everything? I think this is next level beyond our county. Is the permit for Vistra being put on hold until further notice? I believe that this permit was put through with very limited information to our community. I remember when there was a one-page thing, I think, in the weekly, that who reads the public announcements in the weekly, but a few of us do. And I think that is inadequate notification of such a severe and dangerous, project that's being put in our backyard. And one of the final questions I have for Vistra Corp, was there an experimental cooling test being conducted prior to the fire? I've been informed by anonymous people that this was being conducted, and then the fire broke out and there was an explosion. So I think we need answers on that. Also, I just gathered some data from the air quality on Saturday and Sunday from the Marine Lab. They have an air sensor there. On Saturday, it was 38 parts per million for the 2.5 particulate matter reading, and then on Sunday it was 58. That's not smoke. Thank you.
Next.
Good morning. Thank you for having this meeting. I'm Rick, North County lifer and elected trustee for the North Monterey County Unified School District, speaking as an individual. I took a tour early last year of the Vistra facilities with others, including Supervisor Chief of Staff Yuri Anderson, and was explained all the operations and procedures Vistra by Brad Watson. Thank you, residents and Granger members who put together the town hall last night. Thank you, Supervisor Church, for coming. Superintendent of the district, Matt Turkey, Trustee Martha Chavarria, and NCOE Trustee Heather Owen for coming. It's not often as other topics where such a majority of our residents, your constituents, agree so passionately about the same subject. What we've witnessed and experienced together after this horrible disaster is unifying, bringing everyone together, working together with the same goal, to find out what happened, get accountability, and find out what your constituents want going forward. This isn't just a North County problem. This is a situation that sets precedents for many millions. You have to get all the information that you can to decide what to do for our children and yours and prevent anything like this ever happening again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Next.
Hello, I'm Christina Davis. I'm a resident of Prunedale. I am here because I thought that the disaster response was very well handled. Like that timeline was really impressive. And that said, I didn't get an alert about staying indoors until 11 o'clock at night. So my baby and I were hanging out outside for a couple of hours during the period where the wind off the ocean would be bringing Moss Landing wind directly to our house. So I hope that you guys can work something out to do better next time, because we do have these plants. They aren't going away anytime soon, as much as we would love them to. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley?
Mr. Lopez, sorry, got you in the mouth. And the rest of you, thank you for having this meeting. My first question is, Vista is supposed to have another big mega cell going out there. Is that going to be shut down? No one seems to know the answer. I asked that question last night at your dog and pony show. No answers really came out of that meeting. I actually got up and walked out because I saw it as being a dog and pony show. So I'm going to ask you, is Vista going to put another plant out there? Because it's already coming. And you're the ones who have to stop it. My next question is, Chief Mendoza, Tina, Sheriff, they need a raise. They covered your ass. They need a raise. But my biggest question is, all these EPA and everything else, we don't need them. I always believed in an apprenticeship program. Still do, even though I'm retired. So let's get all these schools a monitor all around that little area and let them do the monitoring, because they're the ones who got to live with it for the next 75 years. Not you, not me, and not most of these people in this room. We're going to be gone. Fertilizer. So let's get the younger ones in there so they know what's going on. You can implement this with the schools that we have. Put an apprenticeship program in it. That's going to give Mendoza and Tina and yourselves people that are going to want your jobs. Think about that. We need those people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Smalley. Next.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Bhavik Patel, and my company operates the Inn at Moss Landing Point. That's right there in Moss Landing. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was just the economic devastation that this has caused. Moss Landing is home to our fisheries, our fishermen, our tourist industry that really helps drive the growth in that area. But the fire at the Moss Landing battery facility has highlighted some serious gaps in our ability to communicate effectively with the community and coordinate amongst agencies during emergencies. I, for one, had guests traveling from all over the country. I didn't have something clear to be able to give these guests to say, hey, it's safe to come or it's not. Even after evacuation orders were lifted, some roadblocks were eliminated, my guests were still being turned around and told that the air was unsafe to breathe by Caltrans workers, a CHP officer, to the point where I had to get the sheriff's office involved to even let employees come to work. I think we need a comprehensive plan for emergency communication that differentiates between types of incidents. So wildfires, chemical fires, or industrial fires, each requiring unique protocols for evacuation, health precautions, and response times. Right now, there is a confusion about what to do and who to listen to. A standardized protocol similar to our wildfire evacuation process needs to be developed for scenarios such as the battery fire that just happened. Second, we must establish a single lead organization responsible for coordinating emergency communication across all agencies. You've heard from others today that said they didn't even get an evacuation notice or knew of evacuations happening. Whether it's the Office of Emergency Services or a newly appointed body, this organization must ensure consistent messaging to all stakeholders and to all stakeholders from first responders to residents.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Next.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Megan McKenzie. I'm a community member that lives in the local area impacted by this unprecedented and terrible event. And I share many of the questions and concerns our community has shared with you today, including the acute and long-term impacts to our health, our community and businesses, and our local fragile ecosystems. And I'm not going to reiterate those now, but one question that I have not heard asked, answered, or addressed in any way by this member, this county, the businesses, or in any way by our community, is what are you guys doing to protect the public from earthquake impacts that may impact these plants? We reside near a major fault line, the San Andreas Fault, so I'm curious as to what safety and mitigation measures are in place. Is this at all a concern? And while I'm not a geophysicist or a seismologist, I do believe this is an issue that is worth consideration and providing information to the public on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKenzie. Next.
Cool. Buenos dias. My name is Kellen Figueroa. I'm with Milpa and also just a community, Monterey County community member. So thank you so much for the information that was shared today. I think it was really important for our community to be able to hear what's going on, right, what happens, because I know it came for a surprise for us, right, as it might have for y'all as well. But some of the biggest things, like, we're all obviously still concerned, right? We were getting calls left and right of like, hey, do you guys know what's happening? What's going on? Are we okay? But I know there's still answers coming. We understand there's still some things coming out. So we do appreciate, too, that there's raw data out there, right? Because we can look at it and things like that. But just as community residents, right, we want to know exactly that, okay, what happened? What's our next steps? What's going to be the environmental impacts that are happening for our community members, right, for the Tri-County area as a whole? But what assessments need to be made, right? We're not experts in this field, but at the same time, it's like, hey, we're here to support and just being able to make sure our community feels safe, right, that they can still be where they're at. So we do look forward to working with y'all to make this right for our Tri-County community members, but at the same time, trying to see, like, all right, cool, just being transparent with everything happening, right? So just appreciation. Thank you so much for all the information. Yeah, have a good one.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name's Tamara. I was at the range last night, and I want to say thank you, Glenn. You're very upfront with us about everything. I'm emotional and I'm disturbed because I'm hurt, I'm angry, I'm confused. I'm not getting the answers. You say that we didn't have these chemicals and that it's wood, smoke, and whatnot. But on Friday, when I was out, the chemicals that I smelled left a metallic taste in my mouth. And this is part of why I'm so upset and confused. The last time I had that metallic taste in my mouth was when I was having toxins pumped into my body for chemotherapy. The difference between my chemotherapy that I received and the toxins that were out there in the air, that chemotherapy, years of research. It was regulated for my body specifically. We have no regulations here. Where I was at, in my house, we kept the doors closed. Everything was closed. I have 2 huskies. I couldn't let them outside. We're blocking things off. We have no answers as to when we should or shouldn't. I was looking at motel rooms to stay away. $1,000, $2,000 for a month. A lot of us don't have that kind of money, and yet we're being told even now that it was smoke in the air. Well, what I'm feeling right now, with the exception of Mr. Church, is you're all giving us smoke in the air. And I, for one, am hurt, bothered, angry, and confused. I have every emotion. And on top of that, what nobody has said here today is, what about our mental health? based on what has happened? What about my mental health? I've been through so much, and this is just one more thing that has landed on my plate. I suggest that you all think about that when you're thinking about everything else and what restrictions will be moved forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Little, and I live on Avery Lane in Prunedale. And I went and got my granddaughter. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter that I'm raising that went to Alcorn School, and I did see the smoke plume as I was going to get her and picked her up, and then didn't see it again. I thought, well, not much going on. But I did look it up, and I went on social media and found out that there had been a fire there. So anyway, as everything goes on, I never was informed too about any evacuation or I never was alerted or anything like that. But also what happened is that so the next day, of course, the school was closed, and I had to keep my granddaughter in. And so around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Riley says, I'm itching, Oma, and she couldn't stop itching. And she has a rash on her leg. And so I called the doctor, and pediatrician called me back, and she said, well, there's nothing we can do about that. We don't know, what that could be. And she never looked at it, nothing. So my question really is, more than anything, is that this is the 4th time that this has happened. And we're still here now we're here. This is like a really awful thing that's happened. People don't know what to do. And the same thing is I don't have any money to go and get away from it. I don't have $1,000 to just sit there and go, oh yeah, let's just go somewhere else. There's nowhere else to go. And I know I'm not blaming any of you people. I'm not at all. But I think that everybody's got to be a little bit more responsive, take a little bit more responsibility about the fact that what are we doing here? And it's true what the gentleman said. It's not going to be us. I'm 70 years old. I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but my granddaughter's going to be here, and your grandkids are going to be here. And so we got to deal with this after 4 times. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Heather Griffin. I'm with the Moss Landing Fire Community Response Group that met last night. Thank you, Glenn Church, for coming. We invited you. We are a grassroots group of residents that kind of came together and decided to try to do something to help answer questions and figure out what is the next step moving forward. How do we move on from this disaster that's happened in our own backyard? One question that hasn't been brought up, that has been brought up a lot online, is what financial assistance is available right now, not 6 months from now, right now, for those people who have had health issues, businesses who have had to close, people who have not been able to go to work. Is there a fund available right now? Does Vistra have a fund? People need it. That's the first thing. Second thing is there's a lot of contradicting information about this smoke. I live in Prunedale, and I have never had a metallic taste in my mouth before. And yes, there are people that burn fires in their fireplaces. We do too. I've never had metallic taste, and I live 5 miles from Moss Landing. So to say that it's that, I'm sorry, that's a joke. I can't even believe that he said something like that. It doesn't even make sense, especially when we were told to close our doors and windows and to turn our HVAC systems off. If that's the case, then why is it just smoke from our fires? Okay, that just doesn't even make sense. It's so contradictory. So I want to bring that up too. Also, there were a lot of people who live in the local community who have cell phones that are outside of the 831 area code who were not notified. I know someone who lives in Moss Landing. She was walking on the beach when it happened, and she did not know anything about it. Her phone never notified her. She was never told to evacuate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Board. My name is Belinda Touloub, and I'm a resident of North Monterey County. Sorry about my throat. I just haven't been well. I'd like to ask the board, actually, I'd like to ask Vistra to go offline on all of their equipment until they find regulations or review and determine that they're meeting all the regulations under the NFPA for this new development and this new technology that has come out. NFPA themselves agree that they still need more testing to determine the regulations necessary for this new technology. However, I really cannot believe that people are standing here saying that this is an unforeseen incident. It has happened before. It's happened in 2019 in Arizona that created the issue for NFPA to step forward and say, yes, we need to conduct studies on this. And they do now have studies for these ESS systems so that they can provide some kind of regulation for this technology. However, Monterey County moved forward in 2019 and allowed Vistra to move in 2020 prior to the regulations being in place. So at this point, I would hope that Vistra would be a responsible party to step up and say, you know what, we do have a legacy system here that is not meeting even the regulations that NFPA now has put into place. And why don't they step up and say, we'll take that legacy system offline. I'm not necessarily saying the newer systems that they have out there, but I'm not really sure what they have there. Additionally, I'd like Monterey County to step forward on their current application, PLN 190253, Amendment Number 1. And this one has now already been through the process of review, and I think this one should be halted until they can determine and prove to the government and public that they can provide a safe systems without these kind of conflags and runaways. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Kathleen Ushinsky. I live in Moss Landing. I am 2 doors down from the snack shack on the slough. I have a business in town. I work for myself. It's been a huge disruption. On January 4th at 11:53 at night, before this happened, there was a big pressure let-off that I couldn't even hear my TV. I ran outside and recorded it. I posted on Nextdoor. I don't know about you neighbors, but I don't trust these neighbors in my backyard. And then this happened. I don't want to see the power plant go online. I want them to move it to Texas or wherever the hell they're from. And it's all about the money, and they're just like coming into our small communities with right under our nose without us knowing and putting us at risk. We're not really that important, I guess. But anyway, I just want to say I'm angry, and I just want them out.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Jordan Caballero, and I'm the acting president of the North County Rec and Park District Board, which served as an evacuation site for this disaster on Thursday and Friday. I want to thank the county leadership. I think that you've done the best that you can, considering the circumstances. Obviously, you have a lot on your plate with the new board, with the changes at the federal level and the state level, and the fires in LA. But this, obviously, as everyone is saying, is an emergency here locally. And even though it is in primarily Supervisor Church's district, it will affect all of you. I'm sure you've gotten plenty of communication from your constituents. I want to thank Supervisor Church for his hard work on this issue. I know a lot of the decisions were made before he was elected that led to this, and him and his team are doing the best they can, I believe, to make this happen. The response yesterday was a community organized group. Over 200 people packed into the Prunedale Grange. We were all there last night, and just shows you how passionate people are about this. And a couple things have been highlighted about through this event. One is the lack of organization, communication, and coordination between the local agencies with the federal and state agencies. I think just like 2 years ago with the floods in Pajaro, this on a smaller scale has caught a lot of us off guard and kind of exposed the lack of communication among some of those important agencies. I can tell you people were concerned. And so the disconnect between what was being said on television from officials and what was being said on social media from the real people experiencing it is a large disconnect. And so I'm hoping that through this process that we can bridge that gap with the community is upset, angry, confused, misunderstood, and yet these official agencies are saying, no, air's fine, go back to work, go back home. And so you can understand why people are very upset and very frustrated. So I hope the meeting last night was great, but we also know that over half of our community is Spanish speaking, and I hope that we can do a better job of bringing them to the table as well.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Kim Ritez Solano. My family has lived and been in business in Moss Landing for 50 years. This will be our 50th year. We love our community, and we respect all of you for all the hard work that you've put into this. And I know that this was an unprecedented event. It's really hard for me to imagine right now how to bring back the confidence that Moss Landing is a healthy place to come to right now for business. We've been closed since Thursday. Fortunately, we were almost done with our day Thursday when we started hearing the alarms at 3 o'clock. I just don't think we know enough right now to continue with these companies to be online right now in Moss Landing. So if Vistra is offline, the other plants aren't, the other battery storage units aren't offline. I don't know what the difference is in the risk with them continuing to be online as well. And I concur with what Kathleen just said. We all heard that explosion the other night, and nobody could tell us where it came from. You know, we're a little bit suspicious. And there are too many unknowns out here for us to feel comfortable. For me to open my doors, I'm paying my employees right now out of our pocket to not come to work. They're not applying for unemployment right now because we just don't know where we're at or where we're going. So we continue to pay them, and I don't feel comfortable opening. I have parties planned throughout the end of this month and February and March, and I've been canceling them. We have 5 Airbnbs. We told all of our guests not to come. So thank you, and just help us, please. Just keep in mind how we really feel and what the safety is for all of us.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Diana Mark, and I'm a Prunedale resident. Been there all my life. I saw Mr. Church and some of the Prunedale people here and Moss Landing people last night at the Grange.
Can you bring the microphone just a little closer for us? Thank you.
I'm very upset about what's going on because I do feel like we are not being told the whole truth. And I have grandkids that stay with me, got a newborn. This is very upsetting. I don't trust our media. I don't even trust our representatives. Our governor, I do not even trust him. Where's he at? Has he even come down, walked? He hasn't even spoken to us. I do suffer from asthma, and I know there's other people here too. And the gentleman that got sick, who's going to pay his medical bill for going? We need to do our own testing by our own people that we can trust. This is our county. We need to protect our county, our people, our children, our grandchildren. That's all I got to say. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Anybody else in room? All right, not seeing anybody else in the room, we're going to go to Zoom. Invite folks to use the raise hand function, *9 via landline, in order to be recognized. Again, one more time, raise hand function, which is at the bottom of your screen in the reactions tab. If you're on mobile, look for that raise hand function. In order to be recognized, *9 via landline will raise your hand as well. So at this time, I'll turn to the clerk to announce who our first speaker is.
Phone number ending in 628.
Phone number ending in 628.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
Hear you.
Hello?
He muted himself. Peggy Stamp.
Peggy?
Hello? Can you hear me?
628, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, recently, after the Moss Landing fire, I watched a video it was about lithium-ion batteries. It was put on by the New York City Fire Department. This officer in the fire department pulled out a little motor scooter, a child's toy, really, and he pointed out that this type of scooter was put in an apartment building. It was charged inside the apartment, and it started on fire. Apparently, it was a very large apartment building and burned down the whole apartment building. The point is that I'm all for alternative energy, that kind of thing, but perhaps we could find something a little safer than lithium-ion batteries. They're everywhere, and according to this New York Fire Department official, they're guaranteed to start on fire. Not all of them, of course, but a small percentage of them. But when you have millions or perhaps billions of them, you're bound to get a disastrous fire. So my suggestion is perhaps we could find another means of storing electricity than lithium-ion batteries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peggy Stapp.
Peggy? You'll need to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
You're
Can
on.
you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Peggy Stapp with Marine Life Studies located on Moss Landing Road, and I really appreciate you, Mr. Church, and all the first responders during the event. Just wondered, why hasn't there been any information published, or why doesn't Vistra have a list of particulates, gases, and materials emitted from those batteries in the event of a fire from tests before ever building this type of facility? It seems logical that there would be a predefined list of substances to test for in such an incident. Also, has there been tests conducted, or do they plan any independent agency to test for the residue and ashes that have settled on the boats in Moss Landing Harbor and the surrounding businesses? One of the people manning the road closures onto Moss Landing Road during the weekend advised me to clean my shoes when I leave due to potential unknown particulates on the ground. Also, there was a truck outside our business who was monitoring the air but said he could not give us any information. Asked him a few more questions, and again, no more, couldn't give me info. But then he did tell us not to stay, but to get in and out of our business quickly. Just like the gal said in an earlier comment today, that a fisherman cleaning off the boat put toxins in the harbor and slew, that, you know, in any other time that would, the guy could have lost his license. But that can affect the sensitive area and the wildlife, including the sea otters. There are hundreds of boats in the harbor. Is Vistra going to send hazmat people to clean off our vessels so the debris doesn't go into the waterway? We should not have to be exposed to the debris on our boats caused by this fire. Additionally, is there any funding for businesses that were forced to close during this period? Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Peggy. We'll go to our next speaker.
Stephanie Marcos. Stephanie Marcos. Monica.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Hello? Yeah.
I'm a Monterey County resident, and I just had a few things. So why didn't Vistra have monitors placed in to measure the particulates and materials in the building where the batteries were stored instead of waiting for the EPA to assess the situation after the fire has already begun? So I was wondering if that is going to be kind of a regulation or, a prerequisite to put these things back online. And also, according to the raw data on the county's website, it appears that many tests did not include the hydrogen fluoride, and there were numerous instances where telemetry was down during the reporting period. And do you have a list of the particulates that were tested for? So while HF is a known concern, what about the other potential harmful chemicals we should be aware of? And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Monica.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, good morning. So I just, first thing I want to point out, there's a lot of confusion in the community for the residents on Dolan Road. There is a road closure still in place, but it was not evidently clear. I had to call Public Works about it. It's closed at via Tonkus Road by Pick and Pull. And then people are able to leave onto Highway 1, or that is just the general consensus because that's what people are doing, but you can't exit Highway 1 to Dolan Road. So we need some clear guidance there. I mean, I called Public Works. They said it was a soft closure at one point, and then the other part of it's a hard closure. But people are going through there anyways because there's no clear direction being given to the community. We're getting a lot of our information from fellow community members and on social media, so that needs to change immediately. And yeah, why have us go all the way around when we don't need to? And why is it closed in the first place if everything's safe and fine and dandy at the plant? And another thing, stuff's going around saying that they're not testing the water or the soil. I think that needs to be done. We need more answers like most of the community has already voiced. And in the future, before anything, more plants or anything goes up, we need clear communication to the community. Someone mentioned it was in a local circuit or something. We need social media alerts going out. Hey, do you guys want this plant in your area? And we just need more answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Next.
Jason Sakihara.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jason Sakihara. I'm a community member here in the area, and my daughter attends the local elementary school down the street. I think the biggest concern that I have here is conflict of interest in the testing procedures that are being done by the company that has made such a significant investment in that project. I mean, my understanding is that's $1 billion facility, and yet we're asking the company that made that substantial interest in that area to perform the testing to find out whether or not it can reopen. It's the timing of it too. I mean, we heard from our supervisor that morning, or the morning that the order was lifted, that they were going to push to make sure that these don't reopen, to make sure that if they do reopen, they reopen with certain caveats in place to prevent this kind of action from happening. And then suddenly that evening, these things were, we were told that everything is okay to go back. We're going to allow our children to go back down to school there, down the street from there. And I know that everybody in here has done a good job of highlighting this. I just want to point out that finding another testing company or finding another way to get the data out, I think would be better suited for us as a community than trusting the corporation to do that. And I do want to say that I know that some folks didn't get the warnings, but I do feel like this was a great response on behalf of the county. I know that the first speaker who went up and presented, she laid out that timeline. I just want to say thank you to everybody for doing due diligence and getting that work done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sakihara. Next speaker, please.
Yes, phone number ending in 915.
Hello, can you hear me?
Can.
Thank you. My name is Becky Steinbrunner. I live in Santa Cruz County, and I received 2 notifications from the Santa Cruz County Cruise Aware Notification System, both warning me to stay inside with doors closed. We have livestock. What should we do with that? what did your county of Monterey advise people with livestock? I've not heard any mention of SB 38 that was signed into law. It was put forth by Senator Laird. This bill would require each battery energy storage facility to have an emergency response and emergency action plan that covers the premises of the battery energy storage facility. The bill would require the owner or operator of the facility in developing the plan to coordinate with local emergency management agencies, unified program agencies, and local first response agencies. To the extent the bill would impose new duties on local government agencies, the bill would create a state-mandated local program. The bill will require the owner or operator of the facility to submit the plan to the county and, if applicable, the city where the facility is located. Is there such a plan in place for Vistra, PG&E, or Tesla? This has not been discussed this morning by the sheriff, by the emergency responders, the health agency. Is that in place? If not, it must be. It is a state-mandated requirement. I want to thank Ms. Beatty for her excellent information and ask that the county select a third-party independent reviewer for all of Vistra's data. And I also want to let you know that I was at the meeting last night, and a contractor there who teaches at Cabrillo College informed people that staying inside with doors and windows closed is not a safe practice.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbruner. Thank you, Ms. Steinbruner.
Thank you.
We're at time. Thank you. Next speaker.
Beverly.
Beverly?
Okay. Hi. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I'm in a meeting.
We can, Beverly. Yes.
Okay, great. So I just want to acknowledge all of the first responders, all of the officials who came out. You've done a great job, and I understand that the public is very concerned and confused and angry and all of that, as I was. I live in Santa Cruz County, and I have all of my mementos and photos and everything by the door because I'm also traumatized by seeing all of what happened in Los Angeles and not knowing if embers could fly and we'd have fires that would reach us over in Santa Cruz County. So I'm with the community and appreciate everybody's concern and the questions that have been raised. I was at the meeting, last night. And unfortunately, I would really like to caution people to not go with information that isn't true. Rich Stedman is someone who is trustworthy, and he gave information, and the media was not cooperating with him and kept circulating false rumors that are just stoking people to be more upset. So I appreciate the whole process and you making this meeting available and the meeting last night, and that it's being worked on, and that Vistra came, that the US EPA came. Great, amazing response. And so thanks to all of you. And my heart goes out to everyone in the community who has been directly affected. So thank you all.
Thank you, Beverly. Next.
David Prina.
David?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I wanted to echo everyone's concerns. Oh, sorry, David Prina, I live in Prunedale. I could see the flames of Mordor from the back of my house, so that was a very interesting couple nights and days. But I want to echo everyone's concerns about the need for an investigation. There are other battery energy storage facilities across California and the U.S. And as far as I know, they don't seem to have these kinds of recurring problems. And I think it's very important to know why. I also fully agree with the need to have some sort of local testing of air, soil, and water. I think, as some people have said, there may be some trust gap between local and federal or state officials. So having local control would be great. Also, as a resident, I would very much like to know if there's any follow-up studies about, for those of us who raise livestock or fruit trees or grow their own food, I would like to know if there's any risks involved. Some follow-up from the county would be great on that. for the residents as well as the growers. And then with respect to the first responders, who I think did a great job, I will say, even if it is technically the right approach to let things burn, it's still a frightening and pretty confusing experience to see a tower of flame and smoke. So I think it might be time to reassess that letting it burn whether or not letting it burn is the most appropriate response for any current and future battery developments in Moss Landing. I'd also encourage Vistra, PG&E, and others to investigate if there's other safer battery chemistries, such as lithium ion phosphate, iron air, or others that would accomplish the same. The same energy requirements, and even look into things like thermal storage. I'd also hope that the county would invest.
Thank you, Mr. Perino. We're at time. Thank you. Next speaker.
My apologies.
Michelle Clary. Michelle Clary.
Michelle? All right, let's go to the next one. We'll come back.
Okay, phone number ending in 705.
Oh, sorry. I was able to finally unmute.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. We have livestock. We were behind the evac zone in Royal Oaks. We weren't able to get any resources available because there was no Monterey County initiative of where to take animals. It was an afterthought. Nobody knew if the evacs were just based on maybe an explosion. As we know, air quality. I chose to get my animals out. Other people didn't know what to do. All the people that were helping me evacuate my livestock, we all had metallic taste, burning eyes, burning throats, problems, residue. We have yellow residue all over our things. So to say that a chemical fire is the same as a fire wasn't really addressed. And I'd like to continue to work with the board and independently with others on how we can make this a better process. We are a very heavy livestock community. And again, chemical fires are different. We don't have time because we left on Friday. We already had issues just from that amount of smoke coming in the morning. So we'd like to work better on that. Second, with these Tesla cars and Cybertrucks burning and these batteries, if you can't put it out, that technology needs to stop. There are other ways. There are other clean energy. You got to be able to put it out. Hydroponics, double dam systems. Check out South Carolina. You're able with a double dam hydroponic to have 24 hours of energy. There are cleaner solutions. We can't have this in our community, and we are going to do everything we can to make sure that it doesn't continue to happen until there's better suppression. They know they can't put it out. And now that we're all aware, we're not going to go away. Also, the board should not be making any kind of permits when you don't have a majority of communities, even surrounding communities, that are also voting on the initiative.
Thank you, Michelle.
You are a board. You are not a god.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank
We're
you.
out of time. Next speaker, please.
Phone number ending in 705.
705?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes. Supervisor Lorna Moffett. I'm still smelling a chemical smell here in Monterey, and I'm at the library, and I've been smelling it all night. Nina Vida and several concerned citizens spoke to this board on a few occasions about the fire hazards at the battery storage facility at Moss Landing. If only one of you at the time had said, I make a motion, we look into this further, and that motion carried, we probably wouldn't have had this fire. So your public has the ability to research situations of concern that you may not be aware of because you are filled to the brim with paperwork and concerns of this board. So I urge you to listen to those who come before you and act. I'd like to also say that your most powerful tool is to say, I make a motion. And the Palestine victims of the vinyl chloride train wreck had to hire their own environmental assessor because EPA told the citizens there was no environmental health hazards and they should go home. And when they did, they became sick. So they hired their own environmental chemical analysis personnel. And that personnel discovered that there was some multiple hazards in the soil. So please, let's be true to one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moffitt. Next speaker.
Yes, iPhone. Gail E. Moss.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, great. Got to ask, just make sure. Yeah, I was doing some research and I found a little information that I thought folks would find interesting about the somewhat shady past of Tesla and Vistra. In 2024, 8 Bay counties and 17 other California counties sued Tesla for illegally dumping hazardous waste. Tesla was convicted and fined $275,000. In 2021, Tesla was fined another $750,000 for air quality violations, and they dated back to 2015. Again, 2021, Tesla was fined for illegal waste disposal of hazardous waste, and they were fined $40,000. So, and as we speak, Tesla batteries cause extremely hazardous conditions to firefighters because they explode and release toxic hydrogen fluoride. Okay, I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to go over this quickly. I got my information from Violation Tracker online. Dinergy, also known as Vistra, has been fined a total of $882 million, consisting of 88 records of violations for power utility violations, operations, and systems. Of those, 14 were environmental regulations violations of $525 million for air pollution, and another $23 million for consumer protection violations. This is like, and that's not even counting what they did to us.
Thank you.
Here.
We're at time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Yes, Matthew Sablon.
Matthew.
Matthew Sablon.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hi, Matthew Sablon, resident in Broomdale. I believe this fire started around Thursday at 3 p.m. or so. And it took how long for Vistra to make a comment or provide a response on this? Granted, our first responders and Supervisor Church, your guys' response was excellent. We feel confident in this community with you guys here. But with Vistra, there's absolutely no confidence with a company like that in their response. Secondly, though, if a liquor store doesn't have a license to sell alcohol, is it allowed to continuously to sell alcohol? If this storage facility didn't have, or they weren't compliant with SB 38, why were they allowed to still operate? We see the evidence of what their negligence is in not complying with SB 38. So now I think we need to work together for a response and how to address it. I don't think these facilities should be in the area. There's a lot of other issues going on that many of the residents are dealing with. I believe most of us were here for the 2018 fires in Santa Cruz, and I'm asthmatic. and was working outside during that time. And what I experienced during those fires is nothing compared to, what I'm experiencing now, or probably what other residents are experiencing as well. So this wasn't just an inconvenience, Brad. This is a serious issue that I hope Vistra will take seriously and work with our county and supervisors to address and make sure this doesn't happen again. These plants should be nowhere near Elkhorn Slough or any residential facilities. So
thank you, Matthew. Next speaker.
Yes, caller in user 4.
User 4.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. My name is Marilyn Garrett, and I think of a quote from Judy Berry of Earth First years ago where she said, capitalism cannot exist without destroying the earth. And the corporations and their poisons, like from Vistra, PG&E, Verizon, you can make a long list. We are being polluted to death. And I am thinking back to when I was in high school, and my school was closed, and we all had to go home. Why? 1957 or 1958, the above ground nuclear bomb tests in Nevada, the wind shifted and came over LA County where I was living. And millions of people over the years have died because of the nuclear industry, nuclear bomb tests, nuclear power plants, Fukushima, 3 Mile Island. And it was an appropriate statement by Supervisor Glenn Church that this is like the 3 Mile Island disaster with the nuclear industry. This AI lithium battery industry is deadly. The charter should be revoked. Vistra should pay all costs. There should be criminal charges against them and revoke corporate charters. These are ticking time bombs. And we need the well-being of the people and the environment protected, not corporate profiteering. Thank you.
iPhone.
iPhone.
iPhone 15. Those are the last two.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
We've got you. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello, my name is Philip Caronco.
Likely. And I have never printed a business card.
We've got dueling iPhone, so give me 1 second here. I'm sorry. I've got dueling iPhone. Well,
there is everything.
all right, I'm going to go with regular iPhone first, then we'll go to iPhone 15. So, Sarah, if you could start over.
Okay, I guess I'll go
That's
first.
you.
My name is Philip. My name is Philip Caronco. I deal in regulations as my profession. These batteries and these corporations have the obligation to ensure that their products are compliant to the local regulations that they have in place. What we need to do as a community is to understand that we are also able to make these regulations even more stricter than the standard that is out there from, as an example, UL, which is one of the leading standards committee for safety, to allow them to have these facilities built in our local area. The manufacturers, of course, are not going to tell you that. They're going to just state that they're compliant to the standard regulations that is provided to them for a single battery, but not in the capacity that they are dealing with that we've seen happening in Moss Landing. That is up to our local government to take these regulations to see how they are interpreted and actually make them more stricter to ensure that something like this doesn't happen. They should be providing us a risk analysis of what can happen if you have a large amount of these batteries placed in the same area at a given time with temperature variations and all other aspects that are out there. The regulations, for anybody to read them, are very vague. They do allow a lot of outs for corporations to meet the obligations of the regulations. I'm very willing to help out as much as possible to ensure that our regulations that we set in place for our community are for the benefit of the community, not for the benefit of the corporation. And that will allow us to ensure that we are holding them to a higher standard. And that's what's happening in all other countries, such as Europe and Canada. The regulations that they're putting on these corporations for batteries has astronomically increased. It is for the fact that they are concerned about their citizens rather than the bottom line for a corporation.
We're at time. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
iPhone. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just think most of my questions were answered, except I heard that there are other existing battery plants that were grandfathered into this situation. And I'm wondering if those permits could be pulled until they meet today's standards, today's safety standards for the public. And that's my question.
Thank you very much.
That's it. No more.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands up on Zoom. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the board. I'm going to start with Supervisor Church to my left.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have quite a few comments here to make, and I know we have a proclamation of a local emergency to address, and once we're done with that, I'll have a couple of motions I would like to make. But I'll make a few comments here first. And first up is, I understand these battery storage is essential for the future, and that's the direction we're going. But as I said last night, and I've tried to emphasize, we just can't put that above safety. That's got to be the priority at this point. Unfortunately, it has become really clear for us here, and I think at other sites where there have been accidents, this technology is ahead of government's ability to regulate it and industry's ability to control it. And this process that we are now in, which is learn as we go, it just doesn't work. It jeopardizes communities like ours here. It jeopardizes other communities elsewhere where there have been multiple fires. At this point, I am in the position to believe that we got to step back, look at this skeptically, this technology, skeptically, impose some new safety regulations on there, and just really pause the advancement for a bit of time while we try to understand where we're going. We just can't proceed with the way we are going. A lot of concerns have been raised about the air quality and what happened with the smoke. And I think what a lot of people have a concern with also is not so much the quality right now, as because there really isn't any smoke coming out of there, but what has already landed, what has fallen. I know last, I think it was early on Friday or Saturday, I had an email from somebody who had a question, and they saw they had an oily film on a horse trough, a water trough, and I brought it up with Vistra and didn't really quite have an answer, and that's understandable. I'm just, we haven't had a fire to this extent, I understand. I had somebody last night email me that they had some sweaters outside for a few days, and they brought them in, and there's definitely an odor to it. I noticed, as many of you know, I have a small farm that I turned on yesterday, a pickup that I have for that. I hadn't probably been running in a week. I had to clean the windshield, and it seemed like there was a little bit of an oily substance there. So I think, this is something that people want to have us take a look at, and I don't think is probably being addressed at this point. As I understand it right now, both the facilities with Vistra and the one run by PG&E with Tesla are offline. That's my understanding. They're hooked to a grid, but they're offline, both of them. But as I understand it, they both can turn themselves on at any time depending upon that company's choice, and there is no approval needed from any regulatory agency in this state to do that. I'm glad the caller earlier brought up SB 38 because that's extremely important. It was a bill put forth by Senator Laird and Assemblymember Don Addis. This, I think, bill was fairly accurately described in the comments that were given. What has disturbed me as I've looked into this is, from what I understand, since SB 38 was implemented last year, there has not been an emergency response plan presented since that time. I understand Vistra did have an emergency response plan that they had already prepared prior and felt that plan was adequate. We do not have any emergency response plan from the PG&E facility. None whatsoever. And these emergency response plans really need to look at what is really a worst case scenario. The Vistra plan initially looked at just one battery module on fire. We obviously had, I don't know if it's hundreds or how many, but burned. There's a gentleman made a comment earlier about Vistra having a permit out. He did yell that out at the meeting last night, which isn't usually the way you get an answer. I could not find him because he had said he had already left, so I couldn't have a chance to talk to him. But there is a Vistra permit that's out there. It has not scheduled for hearing. It hasn't gone to CEQA yet, is what I understand. So it's some time away from anything happening on that. I do want to point out, as I understand it, there is still one other building with these batteries that are stacked on site. And I think at that point, I don't have any other comments. I'll wait till we go through the resolution and come back.
Supervisor Daniels.
Thank you, and do want to reiterate all of the comments that have been made, thanking our first responders. Really appreciate all the work that everyone's done, and in particular, Chief Mendoza, who's been at the heart of this. And I also want to just express to Supervisor Church that I've been in the experience as a staffer of having a crisis of this magnitude in your district, and it is, I'm here to support you in any way I can and help get all of the answers answered that the community has brought forward today. I honestly think we have the exact same questions. And I do want to say, to the comment that was specifically made about me, this project was approved in May 2019. I was appointed to the Board of Supervisors, to the Planning Commission in January of 2020. But the genesis of SB 38, which has also been brought up, was Senator Laird responding to your supervisor's big concerns about fire in these plants and what to do to address those concerns. And my experience on the Planning Commission and stating that this sort of potential was never brought up. I have no recollection of the potential for lithium batteries to explode. It wasn't common knowledge at the time, coming up in any of the BESS hearings that happened after the one that is this approval. And at the time, these projects were supported, the one that I was there for, by the Sierra Club, by the building trades. There was a lot of support. Yet I do remember supporting very strongly from the dais, friends and artists of the Elkhorn Slough's concerns about the inconsistency of this project with the local coastal program because it wasn't coastal dependent. So with that said, I just wanted to say, and I'm not quite clear what the timeline events is going to be for our board comments, but I share concerns about the methodology being used to track HF levels. I have questions about who is going to be responsible for monitoring those levels here on out. I think it's really important that there's some independence in that monitoring. I have questions, and I share with all of you your concerns about future soil testing, water testing, the impacts during a disaster like this and after a disaster like this to our local water systems, to people, to livestock, to agriculture, to our oceans. Those are questions I will do everything I can to get answers to. I have questions about the emergency safety plans that were not submitted and want to know why and how we can get them and how we can ensure that this does not happen again. I have questions about the smell that people are reporting, about the chemical taste. I have not had that experience, but I would like to know if there are what we can learn about that. I have questions about the financial assistance to the small businesses, to the fishermen, to everybody who's come forward and spoken today. I have questions about the obsolescence, it sounds like, of the technology that was in this particular facility. I'm very eager to learn about alternatives to lithium ion for future, other cleaner solutions. I do have a specific question I'll bring up later that's really regarding something we heard today, which has to do with if this is a gas and it's being measured by a particulate matter measurement, which we heard PM 2.5, would gas, because we've got gases and we've got particulates, would a gas like HF show in a particulate reading? That is a big question that I have. And then in Senator Laird's statement that went out this morning, he talks about providing Monterey Bay Air Resources District with sufficient SPM flex gas detectors to effectively track hydrogen fluoride levels. I mean, were flex gas detectors what we used? This is the first time I've ever even heard of a flex gas detector. So lots of questions, but I mostly want to say to everyone who's come forward and made public comment today, we share your anger. You know, I don't share all your distrust of the people sitting here because I really believe in my colleague right here to the right of me and all the folks that have been on the responding end to this disaster. And I just know you can always do better. Let's get the answers to these questions. Let's answer your concerns as we move forward and make sure we follow the letter of the law with SB 38. So, did I get the, is it 38? I might have that wrong. Yeah, good. So this never happens in the future. Thank you.
Supervisor Alejo.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank all our first responders, including our Department of Emergency Management, our Sheriff's Office, our Chief, and all our firefighters, and all the partner agencies I already mentioned. Today, we intentionally, our chair intentionally said our public was going to speak first before we even spoke, to listen to what you had to say. I know a lot of folks had to leave. They're probably having to go to work, go attend to family, but it was important for them to get opportunity to have all 5 supervisors and our CAO and our county council and all our staff hear their concerns, because it is very important to us. I did have questions prepared for our 2 representatives of Vistra, but our chair said that's not the format today. But hopefully, maybe if we could get a quick response, because I had as a form of a question, I'll just say I'll express them as concerns, and then maybe you could give a response. First of all, though, I think our public here in Monterey County and everywhere else in California that's dealing with this, I think they deserve to have an open, honest conversation and answers as well. And how did we get here? People have been asking. And obviously, if you look at the history of Dinergy and its natural gas-powered facility history and oil-powered steam energy producing capacity. Eventually, with the change in state laws, it phased out this power plant so that it was no longer economically feasible. At the same time, the state laws started changing with the support of many environmental organizations to have California reduce its carbon emissions and be less reliant on fossil fuels. So the state has enacted numerous laws that are now enforced by CARB, by the California Public Utilities Commission, the California Energy Commission, and many other agencies to now have the state move towards more green technology. But in order to be able to store the excess, California is primarily solar and wind. I think wind predominates in renewable energy today. But the contradiction is you need these other types of technologies to be able to make that shift to green energy possible in California. And I'm studying this up as all of you, and you look at the benefits. They say the benefits to this technology. It helps keep energy costs down, which is on everybody's mind. It helps with grid reliability. You know, when we're having the blackouts in the state of California, this helps avoid that. And also, when you look at what made this site ideal to repurpose it from a natural gas power plant to what it's being used as today, obviously the transmission lines were there. They had water systems and other types of infrastructure that are needed for this type of battery storage facility. And the reality is today also we use lithium-ion batteries on our phone, our power tools, our vehicles, e-bikes, e-skateboards, e-scooters, many things. And you look at what's happening in other communities. San Diego and Otay Mesa in May of last year had one of these fires that lasted 11 days. But the fire departments there say these types of fires, not necessarily with battery storage plants, but just with these other types of equipment that we use each and every day, is becoming more frequent. They get at 2 or 3 fire calls in their local communities with these other types of items that people use in their everyday lives. But the question I had for Vistra, which hasn't been raised, is the design of what burned last Friday through Sunday. Obviously, if anybody looks at the layout of either the PG&E facility or the Vistra facility, you will see many of these trailer-like mobile battery containers or cells throughout most of the property. But this particular building that burned, which I toured with my staff, Javier, in 2023, I wasn't allowed to be able to take photos of it because they said it was trade secrets. They didn't want photos to be taken of it. But what was surprising to me was a very large building. This is the one where our chief said it's 800 feet by 75 foot tall, the Moss 300 building that burned. If walking through there, if I'm correct, and Vistra could correct me if I'm wrong, this was a repurposed old building, but it was filled with these different battery units, not necessarily the containers you see on the outside, but many of these battery units were much closer, from my recollection, to each other than what we see outside. And from my recollection, they were also stacked on top of each other. The best analogy to say is like Home Depot. I think there was 1, 2, 3, if I remember correctly. So if one of these units began burning at the bottom, there's some other battery units on top that would then start to burn, and then you have 3, and then obviously the proximity to the other rows of these battery units on the sides would exacerbate a fire. And I think that's why we saw this fire much worse than we saw the previous fires, the previous fire at PG&E, which was only one of those container units. I think Vistra's previous ones were much smaller. I don't remember if they caught fire or not, but there was smoldering smoke. But I want to relook at that design as a cause for this type of fire and an increased danger because there was so many battery units under one roof. If the fire sprinkler system was enacted when thermal runaway already is occurring, it exacerbates, it worsens a fire in that type of situation if H2O is falling on the flame. So that's one area where I think Monterey County has to relook whether allowing this design of so many battery units under one roof, if that should be phased out from use here in the future, because it does create a greater danger once thermal runaway takes place. The other things I wanted to just raise was the issue, does technology exist? People are brought up, does the technology exist once the cooling systems in these units are intend to keep the battery cool when it starts warming up, but once a fire starts and the thermal runaway occurs, does the technology exist to put that fire out? And I think the answer is what we heard from our local experts and the fires that we see happen in other parts of the state is that technology does not exist to be able to shut it. And that's why everybody keeps saying it's best to let that fire burn itself out. The other item I wanted to bring up with Vistra was obviously there's the footprint of what has burned on the site itself, and it did bring up concerns from the community about, is there toxic materials there on site? How quickly will Vistra come and clean it up? Because if there's another rainstorm and there's runoff, does that also send those toxins to the slough, to nearby properties? And if anybody Googles the PG&E fire a few years ago, PG&E in its report to the public and the media said any water that was used for fire suppression was collected. Soil samples were done. Soil that was contaminated by the site was removed. And somebody asked, where does that go? Usually toxic soils would go to Kettleman City or Buttonwillow in Kern County, Kettleman City and Kings County, because those are the landfills that deal with toxic materials in our state. So that would be the other question. How soon will it clean up to not exacerbate a situation there where surrounding areas could be at risk? The issue of water testing, I think we need to be clear with the public. The water should be tested. It should continue to be tested. That gives reassurance to the public that we're doing everything possible to test what is a concern on their minds. And obviously, air quality, I think in the future, I think our fire departments, our sheriff's departments, our air resources board should have the equipment provided by Vistra to be able to test for these types of toxic gases in the future, and it could be instantaneously, whereas this time we have to wait for US EPA. If our first responders that are based here in Monterey County had that equipment, we perhaps could have got answers to the public much sooner. Last thing I wanted to mention was the plume modeling, because they referred to, I think, a presentation here in December 2022. PG&E and Vistra were here. Each had, I think it was Vistra that presented their plume modeling. And I want to go look back at the presentation, the slides, because they're available online. And if you look at Vistra's plume modeling, and it was the worst case scenario modeling. It seemed to tell the public it would only be contained within the property itself. And obviously from the plume modeling that we got from the National Weather Service showed something dramatically different. So I just want that needs to be reassessed, whether that plume modeling needs to be relooked at, because it gave assurances to the public then that it doesn't seem to have panned out. And let's see here. Last but not least, I would say I think San Diego County just went through something similar a few months ago to make their policies on this more strict, require more transparency, more studies to be filed on this. I think we need to relook at our ordinance in Monterey County. But at this time, I wanted to just ask Mr. Ziegler or Mr. Watson if they have any response to any of those issues raised. And if not today, can we get answers from you at a future hearing not too far from now? Yes, please.
What I'm hoping we can do today is commit to answering these questions and publicly as well, and meaning online, written, so that the community can have these responses, as I think they're critical to the nature of what we're trying to get from this overall, which is clarity around some of these ongoing issues.
Yeah, and yes, sir, and we'll answer them briefly, and then we'll follow up with more detail. But I believe you asked 3 questions. One of them was around the building that housed the event, and it is a repurposed, as you saw, a repurposed building that was used from back before 2000 with Pacific Gas and Electric when they owned the facilities. That was previously, we call it our 1 through 5 building. Those housed turbines of the old oil and gas units. The design for that, it is a warehouse style, and as you saw, there are different. The building itself was at the time attractive because of its seismic nature and its cooling capabilities. So we'll give you more information as it goes on, but I just want to answer your question. You are correct. That is the building that was involved in the event.
But Mr. Ziegler, just so people can know, because if they haven't walked through there, they wouldn't recall what was the layout like, how the design worked within this building. But was it true that there was multiple of these units? Am I correct in that description? Multiple units stacked in rows on top of each other?
Yes, sir. On the top level, there was a couple of double stacked. Again, we'll give you a layout to show you, but just specifically, there were 3 levels in the building, and it was really based on the old design. So we had to work in and around girders and old pedestals and the like. I would like to be more complete in my response, so that's why I'm kind of saying I will provide that information to you specifically, when we get that to you. But there, in the upper level, I believe there was double stacked batteries, but I have to verify that, sir.
How many of those battery units were in total in the repurposed building?
There were 100,000 batteries. Modules, excuse me.
100?
100,000, yes.
100,000 modules on one roof.
In the building?
Yes. Okay.
The second question was around the cleanup. So we're in day 5 here, and so we're obviously still not actually permitted in the building. We're just starting to get engineers close to it so that they can judge what we have. And then there's going to be a process by which, and we've done this before, as the community knows. We've recently decommissioned our old units 6 and 7, and there's a process for that, which the Monterey County will be apprised of that process, just like the old. Just like the demolition that we just performed. So that will be presented at a later date. We're obviously not even close to that process yet. So as soon as we get to that stage, then we will certainly be discussing that demolition process.
Okay, but any time frame?
Not at this
obviously,
time.
residents are concerned.
I understand.
There's a storm, and I don't know how long it took PG&E to get in there and remove debris, but also do the soil sampling and any soil removal. Mm-hmm. So at this point, you can't give us a time frame.
I cannot at this point.
Thank you.
And then the last.
One question. Oh, that's not how this works. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Those are your questions. Thank you, sir.
All right, Supervisor Askew.
Thank you. I'll just start by thanking all of those who are here today and those who are online and those who participated both in public comment, those who've communicated directly to our offices, those who've communicated directly to District 2 office and staff, those who communicated online last night. We had the opportunity to watch the live stream of that and take notes. Your communication is what allows us to take your questions and then feed those questions back into the system so that we can have that information communicated back so that we can be more transparent and continue to get the answers to the questions that we all, I think, have at this point moving forward. So I also wanted to thank Kelsey Scanlon. The presentation that was presented today was clear, it was concise, and if I could ask for the slides that were presented to make sure we get those up on Legistar and posted to the incident webpage as soon as possible so that those are available to anyone from the public who didn't get a chance to screenshot them. That would be fantastic. Chief Mendoza, Sheriff Nieto, your teams, the mutual aid partners, many of whom were listed on the thank you page. I know there were many more who I saw on site and who were participating. I cannot thank everyone enough for the fast response, the precise response, and the coordinated response in a very, very high intensity situation. I want to just personally say we appreciate every single one of you and your families for coming together the way that you did. We're so lucky to have such a strong team here in Monterey County. We really, really value and appreciate you. My comments, generally speaking, I'm not an expert in battery technology, but I have spent the past 4 days reading everything that I can get my hands on and leveraging every contact that I have available to me to speak to anyone who I have access to who works in the field of renewable energy technology, battery innovation, as well as utilizing our air quality expertise and waste management expertise, some of the questions around disposal, Department of Toxic Substance Control, who I know we now have on site, who will be advising on some of these. There were questions asked today where I think we do have answers to those questions. There were many more questions that I have as well that I share. With every conversation and every article and every document and every case study that I read, I have a long list of additional questions, generally organized into what appear to be 3 sort of buckets for me, a whole handful of technical questions that we will continue to look for technical answers to. I have a whole set of regulatory questions. I think former Chair Church, the technical or the regulatory questions that have come up for me are significant, and really we need answers on that regulatory set of questions. They're significant. And then additionally, there's questions around transparency and communication and how the industry is moving forward. I think Supervisor Alejo, you touched briefly on some of the context around the larger picture, but this really isn't an issue specific to Monterey County. This is a much larger issue, and how we collectively address it. I think we have the opportunity right now to raise these issues that maybe others weren't paying attention to, but really need to be addressed. So within that, I've learned about things like the NFPA Standard 855, the UL Underwriters Laboratory, OEMs, the Pacific Northwest National Labs, the SB, was it 83, which was the most recent legislation. There was also SB 1383 from 2022. Where is that in implementation? The questions are significant. So the requests that I think will be coming to us after I'm not sure what the timing of things are, but for a full investigation. This is a sentinel event that demands nothing less than a full investigation with full transparency, and every question that's been asked today by members of our public, as well as the list that I'll be presenting to our staff. We need answers to every single one of those questions. So I hope that's, I'm gonna look to my colleague to lead that request. The only other comment I wanted to make to members of the public, I too am asthmatic, and that's a really scary scenario to navigate through the world. And the one thing I do, I trust our air quality experts, and I appreciate that the US EPA was here so quickly. I work with Rich Stedman closely. I do believe Rich when he tells me, that the air quality that he's measuring is clean. However, I also know that if someone's experiencing health issues, I believe someone when they tell me that. So if for anyone who is experiencing any type of health issue, I urge you to please consult a doctor, please get your symptoms documented, and please do report that to the health department so that we can have that data available to us and that we can have those reports summarized in a single location. So I just will reiterate that. I've said that in a couple different forums, but I do want to just go on record again right here. Please get that documented so that the county has that summarized information as part of our record of this incident for our documentation as well. But with that, I'll pass the floor back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Askew. In terms of my comments, I just want to share, I have the unfortunate benefit of having experienced a lot of fires, wildfires, building fires, and now a chemical fire. And knowing what those processes look like in terms of cleanup is unfortunately something I'm very familiar with. My family had a building in King City that used to be a car dealership that burned to the ground, and you can imagine all the substances that are in a vehicle being burned in the center of a community and questions arising. So I've been through cleanup, and I know that the time frame that takes. But I also know what happens in an instance like this where there's a lot of questions. We need to get to the bottom of the questions that this community has raised. And we're only, really, this event's not over, but we're at day 5 after initiation of the event and looking at a horizon which we need to shorten as much as we can. But it starts by this being our second meeting since the beginning of this particular incident, getting engaged, being involved, and making sure that we bring all the resources that we need to bring to bear. And so I'm appreciative of all of our partners, especially our first responders, for showing up and doing everything they could to mitigate the disaster, to protect life and property, and recognizing that moving forward, the other partners that were also on scene with us, from state elected leadership, local elected leadership, appointed leadership, to make sure that we could get access to the equipment we needed to get our questions answered, because if they were not on site within hours, we would not have the data to go back and mine through. We're trying to make that as available as possible through the transparent means that the community deserves. And so as we go through this, we know it's going to be a learning process, but at the same time, what we come out with has to be something the community can trust. I think the one challenge that I see possibly to be the biggest before us is rebuilding that trust, given some of the comments I heard today. I trust our county staff. I've been through the trenches with them. I trust Rich Stedman from the Air Board, right? I have no reason to distrust the EPA. I've heard questions about other folks that have been used in this particular response, but I can tell you that having been as part of the county team for 15 years, here as a supervisor for 6, there are some really good people who are part of our team, and we need to trust them when they bring forward data. I know it's not easy, and there's going to be more questions that arise, and challenge us with those. Let us go find the answers for you. And when we find the answers, we have to work through them together. It's not going to be easy, but together we can get to the bottom of the questions that the community has, and you deserve that. And I know that some of the recommendations that will come after the adoption of the resolution that we have on our agenda next are going to help us develop a pathway for that communication and access to be created for community. And so with that, I'm going to wrap my comments there on this particular item and go ahead and say that the item 1 is concluded with the briefing having been received. And we're going to move towards the adoption of a resolution to ratify the proclamation of local emergency issued by the CAO. And for that, I'm going to turn to our County Counsel, Susan Blitch, as well as Kelly Donlin, for a brief presentation.
I can probably make it very brief. I don't see Kelsey, but on this past Friday, the CAO issued an emergency proclamation, and that was signed by CAO Sonia De La Rosa. Within 7 days for that proclamation to have be effective or continue to be effective, this board needs to pass a motion ratifying that proclamation.
All right. So at this point, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We've got a motion from Church, a second from Alejo. I'm going to open this up, see if there's any public input on this proclamation. See no one in room, no hands up via Zoom. We'll close public comment, and I will ask all those in favor to signify by saying aye. 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 Anybody opposed? The motion carries. And with that, I'll turn to Supervisor Church for any additional motions.
Thank you. And I know today's meeting we were basically taking public comment request was not to really engage with Vistra, and I do hope there's going to be, I believe there'll be a time down the line when we have a little more information that Vistra may be able to offer, where we have clearer questions that we'll be able to have that discussion. I withheld my questions in respect for that decision today. My first piece of information I need is a question for County Council, and that is just to try to understand what emergency powers the county possesses to pause or to halt the battery facility and Moss Landing, or specifically, is there anything we can do not to have these go back online?
So right now the county can look at its various environmental, building, and land use regulations for compliance. As we heard from the environmental health, they will be actively participating in cleanup issues to make sure that's done in a safe way. Going forward, we can explore further regulations. However, I would point out that the state has a significant role in the approval of the facility, and we cannot pass regulations in areas that are preempted by state law.
Okay, so we can impose some regulations as we try to sort this out. What about the, as I mentioned earlier, my understanding is both facilities are offline and they can turn on as they choose. Is there anything the county, any role the county has in that?
They can look at things like the cleanup and the fire, potentially fire regulations. That would be probably North Fire instead of the county. But to my knowledge, once it is adequately been cleaned up and they're meeting fire regulations and they're meeting county permits, know that would be under state jurisdiction.
Thank you. And just to clarify, so the building that exists similar to the one that caught on fire, there's nothing that's under state. We can't really do anything about that outside of perhaps potential fire or looking at it.
With the caveat that we've had minimal time to research this. I know that they were approved by the California PUC and approved by the California Department of Energy, and that I believe is operating. That governs operations.
Thank you for that, but you're able to research in this limited amount of time. With that, I want to have two motions here. My first would be for the county to send a letter to Vistra and PG&E requesting that their battery facilities not turn back online to the power grid until the causes of this fire has been determined and addressed. And also that both companies stay offline until they have become compliant with SB 38 in a worst case scenario. And that would be my motion, to send a letter. I understand we have no power behind that. It's a request. That's a motion.
Second that motion.
Second on the motion.
Sure.
Mr. Church.
That the county send a letter to both Vistra and PG&E requesting that their battery facilities not be turned back online to the power grid until the causes of the fire have been determined and addressed, and preventive measures addressed. And also that they stay offline until both companies have complied with SB 38 and presented emergency response plans for a worst case scenario. A worst case, that's just what we've just experienced.
Supervisor Alejo.
I think I could support that. Obviously, they should be in compliance with SB 38. Why PG&E hasn't filed theirs, that's great. And whether Vistra's report that was done 4 months before the law went into effect, it shouldn't take shouldn't be too hard to make sure it is in compliance with all the requirements of that statute. So yes, I could support. I had one more other concern, but I'll get back to it.
So on that one, I think my only concern is the definition of worst case scenario, right? Could be subjective. So given, I know you said what we just experienced, but I think perhaps the use of the word catastrophic. I mean, imagine all the batteries going up at once. I mean, well, we've been told it's not possible. We need to know and want to be clear on that. So,
yeah, well, yeah, and I'm happy for that clarification. I'm hoping there's not a worse case scenario than what we've experienced already.
Yeah. Oh, I know what that other issue was. It was just on the cause of what caused this fire. Obviously, Vistra has a lot of video of their whole facility, so we should be able, the public should be able to find very quickly where it started, how it started, and how the fire spread throughout the entire building. Thank you.
Okay. Got a motion, a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Back to you, Supervisor Church.
Okay, my second motion is really in regard to as listening to county council here and understanding, I mean, there needs to be more research. I understand that. Your preliminary research is basically leaving us with few options. So I would like to explore that some more, and my recommendation at this point would be to form an ad hoc committee on the board between myself and with Supervisor Daniels, to collaborate with other county, state officials, any experts in the field that we can find, so that we can determine the best course of action moving forward at this point. But I would like this to also include the broadest possible list of options for this county. That includes from what happens if we do nothing, to the point as if we can do anything on terms of shutting down a facility. I want to see a list of options that we can do, what the potential ramifications are. And I know this is kind of detailed and difficult. I would love it back. We could get it back as quick as possible. I'm going to say a month from now, because I don't know if we can put together all this technical information quicker than that. And I'm hoping the companies that have facilities out there will stay offline till we can look at this broader picture.
So you're looking for final report in a month, or do you want to do monthly status report until work completed?
Well, I'm aware some of this will take some longer time than a month, but at least get a preliminary back so we have some direction we can go on. Give us some list of options so we know where we're going with this. Okay.
There's a motion.
Supervisor Daniels, are you comfortable? I'll second that motion. Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? The motion carries. Final thoughts, Supervisor Church?
I don't know what else to do besides what we just proposed, so I'm going to leave it at that unless we can come up with something else.
All right. I'm not seeing anybody else reaching for a mic on the dais, so at this point we've concluded the public portion of this agenda. We are going to closed session. I'm going to go to council, and I'm expecting that we're going to recess out of closed session without reportable action, but anything else we need to cover?
You took the words out of my mouth. Yes, we will be recessing to closed session. There will be no reportable action from closed session, and we will adjourn from closed session.
All right. Is there any public comment on us going to closed session? Hold on.
So when you look at the analysis for the worst case scenario and all those scenarios, I would love to see a probabilistic hazard. Years ago, I used to be an earthquake engineer and worked on nuclear projects for the seismic hazard, and it took a whole year just to do the calculations and to cross-check each other. So I want to see the hazard at all probabilistic levels and what's going to be the result of all those scenarios in terms of like the disaster, how is it going to be mitigated and all those things, because letting things up into the air and that's not even a safety mechanism like that. So I want you guys to put that together. Happy to contribute to those teams if the public is allowed to be involved in that. But I also think it needs to be shared with the public because we need to be aware of those hazards.
Thank you again. This is on us going to closed session. It's not not just another bite of public comment. So I want to just make sure folks know that, but thank you. Anybody else on the closed session?
My comprehension level's a little low today. I apologize, coffee. I just want to stress this to the team. I was here at the last meeting, and I said that, you know, I want to extend my support to each and every one of you. And I remember expressing the challenges that I know that you're all dealing with, unprecedented times. So my concern are the burn rate of the battery in particular. As somebody who knows about thermite, nanothermite, and thinking about the worst case scenario, Glenn, when I heard the number of 100,000 batteries, I think about war zones, a 7-pound brick of thermite, I can burn a hole through an Abrams tank. I need you to think about the World Trade Center, okay? And I need you to think about at that burn rate, the layer that those batteries are stored on, if they drop down, it could burn through into our water supply.
I want to stay on topic here. I know folks are wandering outside of that. Mr. Mitchell?
Never wander.
Yeah.
Though
let's check the public record.
In your meeting, I believe that it would be helpful that you consider not just regulatory considerations, but other civil or criminal violations that might have occurred, and to seek a list of what may be applicable non-regulatory law that you should look at.
Thank you. Do I have anybody via Zoom?
Yes, phone number ending in 915.
915, again on closed session.
Hello, this is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can, Ms. Steinbruner.
Thank you. I commend you all, especially Supervisor Church. I want during your meeting that you consider the requesting the health department to collect all data submitted from local emergency medical facilities regarding respiratory problems, skin irritations, other things that could be related to these fires. I want to know that I request that you also do some data collection for the farm workers' contact dermal safety of crops that they will be working in. I encourage you to follow Mr. Karanko's advice that you make more restrictive policy, which you are entitled to do, that would be more restrictive than the state's requirements. You are entitled and able to do that. And finally, I want to ask that you require Vistra to contain all stormwater runoff immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbrenner.
Gail E.
Gail E. Again, this is for closed session. Gail.
Okay, yeah, real quick. I just wanted you to consider if you are thinking about trying to slow things down a bit, to go back and check the original legal protocol of the public notice of this plant. Over here in Moss Landing, there's a lot of things that were not disclosed, a lot of meetings that we didn't know about because just poor publicity. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we're going to close public comment and recess to closed session. Again, we will close out from closed session without an expectation of anything to report publicly. Thank you.